Bear had become a familiar face on the island of Sodor for many years. He is a strong and reliable worker, and a friend to steam and diesel engines alike, making him one of the Fat Controller's reliable engines through and through. On most nights, Bear shared a small shed with BoCo, another mixed-traffic diesel. They had become great friends, and on most nights you could hear them laugh and reminisce about their time on the mainland under British railways. One night, when the cold wind blew, the two friends snored quietly in unison. The old shed's dull light bulb flickered as a cracked glass window let a slight breeze blow inside. At that moment, a light puffing could be heard outside the shed, which grew louder and louder. Bear shot his eyes open. "It's here! It's here!" BoCo awoke suddenly. "Who?" BoCo loudly remarked. The thing," Bear whispered. BoCo looked out of the window of the shed, only to see Percy pulling the mail train. With a short peep of his whistle, he vanished into the night once more. BoCo laughed. "It's only Percy, Bear." But Bear didn't reply. "Bear? What's wrong?" The Hymic looked solemnly at his buffers. I'm sorry, BoCo," Bear replied sadly. "I haven't been reminded about that thing in a very long time." BoCo was a sympathetic soul. He knew when his friends had something heavy on their minds. "It's better to get it out than to leave it bottled in. I'm always here if you want to talk about it." Bear looked out the cracked window pane of the shed as he gazed into the pale moonlight. I suppose," Bear quietly said. "It's a bit of a story, though." "I'm ready when you are." Bear looked back at his friend to see an accompanying smile on his face. Bear sighed and began his tale. "Not too long ago, before I came to the island, I worked on a stretch of line on the mainland, not operated by any steam engines at all. I don't think any were, even in a large part of the line anymore. When I first arrived, the foreman had me shunted into a siding so that he, myself, and my driver could have a short chat, so to say. He told me what a great part of the line it was, and how a diesel of my stature would be an integral part of the line and all that. "Thank you, sir," I replied, smiling. He then grew a face of concern. "I'd also request you don't leave the shed around 2 a.m. "Why?" asked my driver, with a look of confusion. "We don't like to talk about it," he bluntly replied. "But all I'll say is, if you hear a slow puffing past the sheds, don't leave." He then abruptly turned on his heel and walked away. My driver and I were dumbfounded. All this over a steam engine? We pondered to each other, but we couldn't think of a reason why. When I first entered the shed, I saw some smaller diesels dozing in the back. I then noticed something peculiar. Every window in the shed was covered up with newspaper and black paint. As my driver jumped down from my cab, he shot me a weird look. "I don't like this, not one bit." I silently agreed with him. That night, my driver decided to stay with me until the early hours of the morning to see what the foreman was talking about. While he took a nap in my cab, I looked on as a worker bolted the 4 doors shut with all the other diesels inside. I then noticed one staring at me with a blank look in his eye. "Hello," I smiled back at the diesel. "I'm D7101. Who are you?"
"G199. I take it you're new here, yes?"
he replied. "Well, yes."
So you don't know what's out there either, then?
No, I replied. Should I?
No.
The diesel said no more and looked away. I was even more puzzled then. At that moment, my driver walked around from me and sat on an old rickety chair. It's nearly time now, he said, looking at his watch. The other diesels fell silent around the shed. Then it was almost like magic. A white light shone through the gaps in the shed doors. I then heard a slow puffing coming closer to the sheds, getting louder and louder. My driver jumped up to peek through the gap.
Don't look,
said 199 in a hushed tone.
Are you insane?
My driver looked back and returned to the chair quietly. The puffing became louder and louder, the bright light moving with the thing as it slowly passed the shed and out of view. My driver and I were confused by what just happened. In the morning, the worker returned, unbolted the door, and work resumed as if nothing ever happened. Work went on for a few weeks, a strange phenomenon occurring every night at 2 a.m. Until one day, the foreman had received a small shunter. Upon arrival, he took him and his driver to the siding to have the chat we all had received. As I looked over at the diesel, all I saw was doubt on the little diesel's smug face.
Have you ever tried to look?
Asked the little diesel to me and 199. We don't talk about it, I replied.
I'm just saying,
the little diesel went on asking.
How much problems can a steam engine cause?
D199 shot him a look.
We don't talk about it.
He then moved on to collect a goods train elsewhere. I glanced at the large sea of blue and yellow diesels. There were some things D199 knew that I didn't. It all came to one cold and rainy night. The little diesel and I were still awake. I was to take some late-night goods up the line. The little one was staring at the clock intently. 1:58 a.m. At that moment, he was being oiled and greased up, and his engine looked all over.
I'm going to try and look tonight.
He grinned at me. I wouldn't. I stuttered.
Oh, come on.
The engine chortled to himself.
What's the worst that can happen?
I looked back at the doors and noticed the worker hadn't bolted the doors yet. He knew this as well as he grinned. Then, the quiet puff could be heard slowly coming up towards the shed, and the bright light came into view. The little diesel readied his engine silently, like an animal hunting prey. He shot me a look one last time, giving me a wink as he did so. At that moment, he shot forward like a speeding bullet. "No!" called the worker as he slammed through the doors with a deafening crack. As he left the shed, his engine went silent. All was silent, except the squeaky hinges on the door. No puff. Nothing. Then a loud, piercing cry rang out as the little engine shot back into the shed, banging into the engine behind him, waking him from his slumber. The little diesel's eyes were closed tight as he whimpered and winced to himself. "What did you see?"
Eyes.
Then through the small cries, the puffing came closer and closer to the door of the shed. I couldn't help but keep my eyes wide open as the lights above flickered violently and loud wheezing could be heard. What do we do?" I asked my driver. All he could give back was a look of fright as the thing spoke back. What do we do? It was my voice. To a T. It was copying my voice. It banged on the door, only enough to slightly open it. Then it came from the door right next to it. What do we do? It echoed all over the shed. All the doors were banging lightly, but it felt so loud. Banging, wheezing, buzzing, everything became so loud. I felt like I was going insane. What do we do? Stop! A small voice called from next to me. Then all went silent.
I promise I won't tell anyone what I saw. Just go away, please.
He pleaded. That thing lightly banged on the door that the little engine ran through. What do we do? It quietly said in my voice. Then an eruption of whistles screeched throughout the shed, and all the diesels now awake began to panic. The small diesel shrieked as he let out a long blast of his horn in fright. Then all fell silent once more. The lights went back to normal, and after a few moments of silence, that thing could be heard slowly puffing away from the shed. My driver and I were flabbergasted. He shook horribly as I left the shed to take my train. I never saw him again after that. Rumors spread like wildfire that the little diesel was scrapped because he didn't want to leave that shed. Others say he disappeared one night, never to be seen again. That afternoon, the foreman called all of us and our crews to a meeting. I know that the night phantom is mysterious, he began. But now I hope you all understand why I told you on your first day why you shouldn't go poking around where it's not necessary. See this as a warning to you. All of you. He pointed to us, and all of the drivers as well. And on every night afterwards, that thing puffed through as if nothing had happened. Even now, I still remember that bright light shining as it went through the yard. All the while, BoCo had stayed silent, listening carefully to Bear's tale. D199 and I were sent here for trial shortly after, and the rest is history. Bear finished. You know, on some nights, when you're not here, I have dreams on what that little shunter meant by eyes. I've had nightmares of an engine with no smoke box door, only eyes. BoCo looked at his friend with a reassuring smile. I'm sure whatever you saw can't get you here. Bear could only look down at his buffers. Maybe you're right. Thank you, BoCo. You're welcome, old friend. A small smile shone on his face as the sun rose over the nearby hilltops. Bear had made it through another night.